Most men don't fail in relationships because they don't love enough. They fail because they ignore warnings disguised as honesty. Men rarely lose relationships suddenly. They lose them slowly because they ignore what was clearly said in the beginning. A woman does not need to shout to reveal her intentions. She doesn't need dramatic exits or cruel behavior. Most of the time, she tells the truth calmly, wrapped in honesty, vulnerability, or casual conversation. The problem is not that she hides who she is. The problem is that men hear her words through desire instead of clarity. When a woman speaks, she is revealing her internal structure, how she sees commitment, responsibility, emotional effort, and you. Her words are not random. They come from patterns formed long before you arrived. Every sentence is a window into her emotional discipline, her boundaries, and her expectations. If you listen correctly, you will see the future of the relationship long before it happens. Men often believe love is proven by patience, so when a woman expresses doubt, uncertainty, or emotional instability, a man thinks staying longer will change the outcome. He believes consistency will earn clarity, but attraction does not respond to endurance. It responds to alignment. The more a man ignores what is said, the more he trains himself to accept confusion as normal. When she says she is not ready, she is not confused, she is clear. When she says she needs space, she is not testing you, she is establishing distance. When she says she has a complicated past, she is not asking for understanding, she is explaining future behavior. These are not obstacles to overcome. They are information to evaluate. A man with emotional discipline does not argue with reality. He observes it. He understands that words spoken early are rarely accidental. They are emotional disclosures, and emotional disclosures should never be negotiated against your self-respect. Most men hear statements and immediately translate them into hope. Not ready becomes later. I don't know becomes maybe. I'm like this becomes I can handle it. This mental rewriting is dangerous because when reality later matches her words, the man feels betrayed when in truth he was warned. A woman who is aligned with you will not create verbal fog. She will move toward clarity naturally. Her words will simplify your life, not complicate it. Confusion is not a sign of depth, it is a sign of mismatch. Strong men do not listen only to tone or emotion. They listen to meaning. They understand that people always reveal themselves verbally before they do behaviorally. Words are the blueprint. Actions are the construction. If the blueprint is unstable, the structure will collapse no matter how much effort you put into building it. Ignoring early statements creates a dangerous dynamic where a man slowly abandons his intuition. He begins justifying what feels wrong. He lowers his standards to maintain access. Over time, he stops trusting his own judgment. And once a man loses self-trust, he becomes emotionally dependent on approval. Listening correctly is not about suspicion. It is about self-respect. You don't need to accuse, interrogate, or analyze endlessly. You simply observe patterns and decide whether they align with your values. You don't punish honesty, you respond to it appropriately. When a woman tells you who she is offering you a choice. Not a challenge, not a test, a choice. Stay and accept what comes with it, or leave and preserve your peace. Men who win in relationships are not the ones who love the hardest. They are the ones who listen the clearest. Emotional readiness is not something you convince someone into. It is not unlocked by patience, effort, or loyalty. It exists before you arrive, shaped by a person's self-awareness, healing, and emotional discipline. When a woman is ready for a healthy relationship, her behavior moves forward naturally. There is direction in her energy. There is intention in her words. And there is consistency in how she shows up. Men often misunderstand readiness because they confuse attraction with availability. A woman can be attracted to you and still be unavailable for commitment. She can enjoy your presence, your attention, and your effort while remaining emotionally closed. This is where many men lose themselves, trying to turn attraction into readiness through sacrifice. But sacrifice does not create stability. It only creates imbalance. When someone is not ready, they will give you mixed signals. They will pull close and then create distance. One moment they want connection, the next they need space. This is not mystery or depth. It is emotional disorganization. And emotional disorganization always transfers stress to the person trying to hold the relationship together. A man with self-respect does not take responsibility for another person's emotional state. He understands that readiness is an internal condition, not a reaction to his behavior. You cannot love someone into clarity. You cannot support someone into commitment. The more you try, the more you place yourself in a position of proving your worth, something a grounded man never does. Unready people often keep options open, not always physically, but emotionally. They hesitate to define the connection because definition brings responsibility. Responsibility requires consistency, and consistency requires effort. When a woman avoids labels, avoids future talk, or avoids commitment conversations, she is not being cautious. She is protecting her freedom at the cost of your certainty. Many men stay because they fear walking away too early. They tell themselves they should wait, understand, or be patient. But patience without progress is not maturity, it is self-betrayal. Time does not create readiness. It only reveals whether readiness exists. A ready woman does not fear losing you by committing. She fears losing you by not committing. Her actions reduce anxiety instead of creating it. You feel calm around her, not because everything is perfect, but because the direction is clear. There is emotional safety and clarity. When readiness is missing, the relationship becomes a negotiation of effort. You give more to keep things stable. You explain yourself more. You compromise your boundaries to avoid tension. Slowly, the dynamic shifts. You are no longer choosing the relationship, you are managing it. And management is not love. Emotional readiness also means the ability to handle conflict without emotional collapse. A woman who is ready can communicate discomfort without manipulation. She can listen without becoming defensive. She can disagree without threatening distance. If every difficult conversation feels like walking on unstable ground, readiness is absent. A man who values himself does not chase potential. He chooses reality. He understands that being alone is better than being emotionally invested in someone who cannot meet him where he stands. Walking away from emotional unreadiness is not punishment, it is alignment. Readiness is felt, not argued for. When it is present, you don't question where you stand. When it is absent, no amount of reassurance will make you feel secure. Accountability is the backbone of emotional maturity. Without it, no relationship can remain healthy, balanced, or respectful. When a woman speaks about her past, and every story positions her as the victim and everyone else as the villain, she is not simply sharing experiences, she is revealing how she processes responsibility. This matters more than most men realize. A person who cannot take responsibility for past outcomes cannot take responsibility for present behavior. Accountability is not about blaming oneself for everything. It is about recognizing personal choices and patterns. When someone refuses to acknowledge their role in failed relationships, they are signaling that self-reflection is missing. And where self-reflection is absent, growth does not occur. Men often overlook this because empathy feels like strength. They listen, they understand, and they want to be different from the people who hurt her before. But understanding pain does not mean ignoring patterns. If every ex was toxic, abusive, manipulative, or immature, the common denominator is not coincidence, it is selection. Choices matter. And choices repeat when they are not examined. A woman who lacks accountability will eventually rewrite the present the same way she rewrote the past. At first, you are the exception. You are different. You are the one who understands her, but the moment conflict arises, the narrative begins to shift. Misunderstandings become attacks, boundaries become control, and your efforts become insufficient. This is because accountability determines how someone handles discomfort. A woman who takes responsibility can say, "I reacted poorly," or "I need to work on that." A woman who avoids accountability says, "You made me feel this way," or "This always happens to me." The first creates resolution. The second creates cycles. Men who stay in these dynamics often find themselves explaining intentions instead of addressing behavior. They defend themselves against accusations that don't align with their actions. Over time, this erodes confidence. You stop focusing on the relationship and start focusing on damage control. Peace becomes something you chase instead of something you share. Accountability also affects trust. Trust is built when someone can admit mistakes without fear. When accountability is missing, mistakes are hidden, denied, or justified. This creates an environment where honesty feels risky and communication becomes strategic rather than sincere. You begin choosing words carefully, not to be understood, but to avoid conflict. A lack of accountability often comes with emotional defensiveness. Difficult conversations turn into emotional shutdowns or explosions. Feedback is taken as criticism. Growth is seen as an attack on identity. In this environment, progress becomes impossible because every issue is externalized. Strong men do not seek perfection in a partner. They seek responsibility. They understand that mistakes are inevitable, but refusal to own them is destructive. A woman who can reflect, adjust, and apologize is emotionally safe. A woman who cannot will slowly destabilize the relationship no matter how much love is present. Ignoring accountability issues early is how men trap themselves in emotional labor they never agreed to perform. You become the stabilizer, the translator, the problem solver, and eventually the one blamed when things fall apart. This is not partnership. It is imbalance disguised as effort. A man with standards listens carefully to how someone speaks about their past, not to judge, but to understand how they think. Because how a person explains yesterday is how they will justify tomorrow. Self-respect is not loud. It does not announce itself, threaten, or demand compliance. It is quiet, consistent, and rooted in standards that do not shift based on emotion or attraction. Most men don't lose self-respect all at once. They trade it away slowly, one compromise at a time, until they no longer recognize themselves in the relationship they are trying to maintain. When a man enters a connection without clear internal boundaries, he becomes reactive. He responds to moods instead of principles. He adjusts his behavior to avoid conflict rather than to stay aligned with his values. At first, this feels like maturity. In reality, it is the beginning of self-erosion, because every time you silence what feels wrong, you teach yourself that your instincts are unreliable. A woman who respects you does not require you to abandon yourself to keep her. She may challenge you, but she will not test your dignity. When a man starts tolerating disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional manipulation in the name of love, he sends a silent message. His standards are negotiable, and once standards are negotiable, attraction begins to decay. Self-respect acts as a filter. It determines what behavior you accept and what behavior you walk away from. Without it, you stay too long in situations that drain you, hoping effort will fix what alignment never existed to begin with. A man with self-respect does not threaten to leave. He leaves when the line is crossed, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Many men believe walking away makes them cold or unkind. In truth, walking away is often the most honest response. It says, "This no longer aligns with who I am." No insults, no explanations, no emotional bargaining, just action. And action communicates standards more clearly than words ever could. A relationship that requires you to constantly prove your worth is not a relationship. It is a performance. Self-respect means you do not audition for commitment. You show up as you are, and you observe whether the other person can meet you there. If they cannot, you do not shrink yourself to fit their limitations. Men who lack self-respect often mistake tolerance for strength. They endure behavior that chips away at their confidence because they fear starting over. But endurance without dignity leads to resentment, and resentment poisons connection. Over time, the man becomes emotionally distant, not because he stopped caring, but because he stopped feeling safe being himself. Self-respect also means trusting your internal discomfort. When something feels off consistently, it usually is. Ignoring that feeling does not make you patient. It makes you disconnected from your intuition. A grounded man listens to that internal signal and acts before frustration turns into bitterness. Walking away is not about control or punishment. It is about self-preservation. A man who values his time, energy, and emotional health understands that not every connection deserves access to his life. Peace is not found in convincing someone to treat you well. Peace is found in choosing environments where respect is natural. The moment you choose self-respect over attachment, your standards rise automatically. And when your standards rise, so does the quality of the relationships you allow into your life. At the end of the day, the greatest mistake a man can make is not choosing the wrong woman. It is ignoring himself to keep her. Every warning you heard, every discomfort you felt, every sentence that didn't sit right was never meant to confuse you. It was meant to inform you. Strength is not proven by how much you can tolerate. It is proven by what you refuse to accept. The men who protect their future are not the loudest or the most aggressive. They are the ones who listen, observe, and act with discipline when reality presents itself clearly. Walking away is not failure. It is alignment. It is choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over emotional survival. You are not here to fix, save, or convince anyone. You are here to build a life where your presence is valued, not negotiated. When you honor your standards, the right woman will never ask you to abandon them. She will recognize them and meet you there.